Well, I'm now joined by James George, who is the International Managing Director for OC&C Consultancy. Absolute pleasure. You have, I suppose, the toughest gig of the day, opening up the conference with the advantages of that and the disadvantages in terms of the tech never quite works when the first presents, does it?
That's right.
So, you had all of our sympathy. Maybe that was a good thing to do.
Yeah.
But the reason that you started was that you, together with the World Retail Congress, launched a report at today's Congress. So tell us a little bit about that, high velocity retail.
Yeah, high velocity retail, exactly. As you say, I started notwithstanding the technical glitches, but I think it was a great honour actually to be there and to be sort of, I suppose, bringing some of the sort of content that is framing the overall conference. So we're really delighted to be doing that. And we've spent, I suppose, probably sort of a couple of months really working on this report along with the team from WRC and from Brandsy and a number of the different businesses to really try and understand what's changing in the kind of retail world, which in a sense I think we've all got a pretty good idea on. But more importantly, how do retailers respond to that? And this concept of high velocity retail is all about what the kind of future successful kind of operating models are and how do we create those future sustainable models.
So if you had to distill the concept of high velocity retail, what would it be then?
So two things. We sort of deliberately, I think we deliberately called it velocity rather than speed, but sort of two things. Firstly, velocity is about speed and direction. So I think this concept, which is, of course, the world is getting faster and faster, and with that, retailers need to accelerate a lot of the things that they're doing. But at the same time, if you haven't set a kind of meaningful direction, if you're not really clear about how your proposition is going to resonate with the customers or beat the competitors, then speed is not going to solve any of those problems.
That's a very important point, because you could just end up being unbelievably busy fools.
Exactly. And I think a lot of retailers have got into this kind of mindset, which is we need to go faster and faster and faster and faster, and aren't actually pausing to reflect on the fact that actually there are people out there who've just got a better proposition, and so you need to make sure that you've got real clarity on that before you then start accelerating away in that direction. So I think it's sort of getting that balance right between the speed and the direction is really important.
So speed, direction.
Yeah.
And then what?
Well, speed and direction. So I think on the sort of 2 points of speed and direction, I mean, we talked a lot about different, I suppose, sort of tactics or approaches to speeding up the business model. I think on the direction side, one of the sort of interesting conversations was really about the need as retailers to be able to say there's, on some aspects, we are the best. We have to be best at something, and that could be on pricing or on quality or on service or on speed and ease. But we have to have some strong suits that we have. I think one of the things that we were talking about this morning was, this concept of, almost infinite choice. There are 800,000 retailers out there. So for a consumer to choose you have to have something that is a real strong suit, that is a differentiated suit. So that is sort of the first bit, which is, be best at something that matters. And then the second bit was, which I think goes alongside that, and I suppose is the sort of theory of strategy really, is be choiceful, and sort of be choiceful on where you follow as well as where you lead. So the example I gave previously was Shein, which is a sort of very high growth fashion retailer, where they're actually delivering product in 2 weeks, at 2 weeks sort of lead time. So unlike all of the talk about it's next day or same day or next hour, actually they're being really thoughtful about how they make that model work for them. So there's a bit about speed, and there's a lot about how do I think about the kind of direction.
Now, you talked a little bit about it in the report. There's a reasonable amount in terms of differentiation and the role of the brand within that. How important do you view the role of the brand in that differentiation process going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's, I suppose there's a couple of things there. One is, retailers who are kind of increasingly focused on branded products and distinctive and differentiated product. And I think there's definitely some good examples. We use Lululemon as a good example of businesses that have got really distinctive and differentiated kind of product. And I think actually that looks to be quite a winning strategy in this world. But at the same time, thinking about the retail brand, so the brand under which the kind of retailer sits. And I think that is important because it is about what's front of mind. It's about how do consumers, when they go online, not necessarily start with Google, but may start with that as a kind of an entry point into the business. And it's also the way in which we're building trust, and retailers are building trust with the consumers. So finding a way to make sure that that brand is known, really resonates for something that is important to the customer is a real key part of managing that, managing in that world of infinite choice as well.
I suppose the big question is so what? So what do we as retailers need to do? Change our horizons, our mindsets, or the way in which we organise our businesses?
Well, I think, as I say, there's a couple of so whats, and I've talked a little bit about sort of direction. I mean, one of the things that we've tried to do, we analysed nearly 1,000 retailers, and to sort of see, are there some emerging models that are proving to be more successful than others? And we identified 4 models. So we identified a model which is all around platforms, typified by Amazon and Alibaba and ASOS and Farfetch and people like that. We identified a model which was effectively the value champions, where you see people like Aldi and Lidl and Costco and Primark. Customer solutions, which are really sort of businesses where service, content, the conversation, and the kind of wraparound that you provide people with starts to differentiate them. So the example we used was Selfridges, but you see these businesses in health and beauty, as you think I use the example of sporting goods, areas where there's a real kind of conversation going on with the consumer, and then a bucket of the brands where the retailers are actually transforming more into branded businesses than they are into retailers. And those 4 models we can see are really demonstrating very strong growth, good levels of profitability. We've described those as the winning model, or I should say winning models. And one of the big messages here is if you're not a winning model, then you're a losing model. And the kind of concept...
Is it that binary now?
In simplification of stories, life is never, life is never that binary. But I do think, part of the challenge that retailers have is they see a load of these challenges. They see this real need for transformation, and 75% of retail CEOs told us that they don't think their model is sustainable in the future. So I think having some simplified versions of models to be aiming for is really helpful for retailers to think about, okay, am I headed in this direction or this direction? So I think it does add simplicity. I think the sort of biggest challenge is that faced with that need to transform, that retailers can't really plot a path forward. They can't sort of put a vision together and work towards it. And I think that's the biggest challenge actually that retail needs to overcome. So hopefully we've given a bit of clarity in terms of where that higher ground lies for retailers to be striving for.
And I suppose to encapsulate all of that, it's evident in the title, but one has to now do all of that at breakneck speed. So what strain does that put on the organisation structure of retailers today in order to be able to deliver that?
It's a great question. So I think, you're right. What we're talking about is operating in a high velocity way, in a high velocity world. But I think it's fair to say you don't have to get there immediately, and I think it's an important.
That's an important point.
It's an important sort of point and differentiation. I think when we were talking earlier on the stage with Naga about sort of examples, we talked about Next. Next is a great example of a business that has been on this journey for 10 or 15 years. It's not suddenly overnight made a sort of transformation in the business. It's been very thoughtful, very methodical, kept one eye on the sort of core business and driving that forward very effectively, whilst being very smart about the sort of transformation that sits alongside.
Well, it's a bit like flying a jumbo jet and changing the engine, at 40,000 feet.
Exactly.
It takes skill.
Exactly, and I think part of the reason why retailers sort of struggle with this so much is that they sort of see the nature of the challenge, the change that needs to be made, and that is it's just too difficult. It's too substantial to really comprehend because they're thinking about making that change over a year or two, and they know the investment and the risk and the likely response from the shareholders is going to be very significant if they say, well, we're going to make no profits for 2 years. I think it's quite different if you say, actually, here's where we want to be in 10 years' time, and then be thoughtful about the journey we need to go on to manage that transformation. So although, as I say, everyone is striving to speed up, and we are trying to get retailers to sort of work in a high velocity way, that doesn't mean you need to sort of accelerate from 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. You can potentially take your time over it.
Well, the report is published. We'll put a URL where you can download it. It also includes a lot of brand Z data and the analysis you've done on that together with our Brandsy team. So I declare an interest in terms of saying it's very good.
Perfect.
But it's certainly worth reading, and I think puts a mark in the ground, I think, just in terms of where retailing is heading over the course of the next few years. So thank you very much indeed. It's been a pleasure.
Good. Well, thank you. We hope it starts a conversation. I don't think it finishes a conversation, but at least we hope it starts a conversation. So thank you very much.